Okay, today's Q&A is about color, and the question is, how do they make colors for food, and is there any Kashrus issues with them? Well, food colorings can be split into two groups, the artificial colors, what they call the artificial colors, and the natural colors. Artificial colors go by names like FD&C blue number 1 or yellow number 5, and typically they're made from petroleum or other innocuous sources, and they don't have much of a Kashrus concern, as long as they're pure. But sometimes they get blended with glycerin or other kosher-sensitive ingredients, and of course, in that case, then it needs hashgacha. Now, now we switch to the natural colors. A lot of those colors are also free of inherent Kashrus concerns. Like, you can make green, orange, and purple colors from chlorophyll, carotenoids, and red cabbage, respectively. And those are inherently kosher. They don't have any Kashrus concerns. But there are other natural colors that are not as good and do have Kashrus concern. For example, there's something called Eno. The real name for it is Enosenina. I probably pronounced that wrong. But anyhow, Eno, or in Europe, it's called E163. And that's made when you take, after you squeeze grapes to make grape juice or wine, the solids that remain afterwards, from that they can get a color out of it, which they call Eno. They're also midrabanan, as stam yain. Unless, of course, you make them under hashgacha, but they're going to be stam yain since they're made from non-kosher grape juice or grape or wine. Another example is carmine, which is made by crushing cochineal insects to create a very good and very stable red, orange, pink, and lavender colors. That item would be asma deraisa because it comes from this bug, which is asma deraisa. This carmine is also called carminic acid, or E120, or crimson lake, or cochineal extract. It goes by a lot of different names. In like cosmetics, it'll be number 75470, and it goes by a lot of different names, but all the same asma deraisa from this insect that it comes from. Now, I told you one coloring which is called Eno, which is asma derabanan, and carmine, which is asma deraisa. Now, from a lechatchila perspective, if we're choosing what to make a kosher product out of, obviously we wouldn't allow either of those into some kosher food. But there's a big nafkamina, halachic nafkamina, between these colors for cases of b'diavad. That is because like this. Colors, when they're used in a food, are typically used in very, very small amounts, which would, but based on their numbers, they would be balta b'shishim. However, there are some poskim who hold that if something gives color, it gives chazusa to a food, then that makes it so important and so significant that it can't be balta even if it's in tiny amounts. Now, there's a big machlokes about whether is chazusa a problem or not. Can something that causes color be balta or not be balta? And most follow the hachra of the Pri Chadash, who says that if the color was came from something that was asma deraisa, then you should be machmir. Then it comes from something that's only asma derabanan, then you could be meko. So that means if we use carmine to give the coloring, the pinkish red color to a strawberry yogurt, the carmine can't be batal because carmine is asma deraisa, and therefore the yogurt is also even b'diavad the yogurt be asr. Now, just as an aside, the kalim that are used for that would not have to be kasher, because kasher and kalim only has to do with tam, and there's not enough color here to give tam. It only gives color, so you wouldn't have to kasher. But anyhow, the yogurt itself would be also even b'diavad because it had this issa deraisa carmine that gave its color. What happens if instead if it wasn't a carmine going into yogurt, instead it was Eno going into a candy to give it a purple color, then b'diavad would be mutter because the Eno is only asam d'rabanan, and we said to Pri Chadash that it can be batal even though it gives colors. Now, one last question is that a lot of people ask about is the coloring used for fresh raw salmon, and it's labeled as artificially colored, and of course that makes people nervous that if it's colored by something artificial or there's some coloring coming from the outside, maybe that's not kosher, particularly maybe it's carmine. Well, most people think that means is they take fish and then they paint it or they do some kind of other way to color it, but that's not really the truth. Really, what it means is that these are fish that were raised in a fish farm, which was basically a big swimming pool. Which makes it easy way to raise them and catch them, and they make sure to feed them something called astaxanthin, which will help the fish have the right diet, so they will have the right pinkish orange color, which is natural to salmon. Now, fish that are out in the sea also eat things that have that in it. They eat it naturally, And this that they must call it artificially colored is a government way of supporting farmers who use wild raised salmon to make these salmon look worse. Anyhow, but the point is that this statement on this that it says that the salmon is artificially colored doesn't mean anything from a kashrus perspective. It just means that the fish were fed something that helps them develop the color naturally and does not pose a kashrus concern.